Good afternoon and welcome to the QCA Becoming B Corp webinar. Throughout this recorded meeting, attendees will be in listen-only mode. Questions can be submitted at any time just using the Q&A tab situated in the right-hand corner of your screen. Just click Q&A, type in your question and press send. I'd now like to hand you over to Jack Marshall, Head of Policy at the QCA. Good afternoon, Jack.
Thanks very much, Paul, and hello and good afternoon to everyone, and welcome to this QCA webinar on becoming a B Corp. As Paul already introduced, I'm Jack Marshall. I'm Head of Policy at the QCA, and I am joined today by two QCA members who both are B Corp. So just by way of quick introduction, I'm joined by Neil Austin, the CEO of Xeros Technology. Xeros is a green technology business with a mission about tackling environmental challenges, including those around plastic pollution and water scarcity. And alongside Neil, we have Alex Cheetle. Alex is the CEO of 10 Lifestyle, a market-leading lifestyle concierge business. So just as a matter of order for the session today, we will, of course, be discussing all things B Corp, going through Alex's and Neil's journeys to becoming verified, the lessons they've learned from the process, and how verification has changed their business and its relationships with their stakeholders. And also, obviously, environmental and social issues are very topical at the moment, and we'll discuss the continued value of being a B Corp. So just before we get stuck into uncovering all things you need to know about B Corps, I just want to do a quick introduction to the QCA and what we're up to at the moment, particularly as we've got a range of attendees online today, including both members and non-members. So at the QCA, hopefully many of you know this already, but we represent small and mid-sized quoted companies, and we aim to ensure that the public markets on which they trade are operating at an optimum level, so these companies can grow, create jobs, and prosper. And we do this through three main means. That's influencing, informing, and creating interaction. So we influence the government and regulators such as the Treasury, Business Department, FCA and FRC. And these policy and influencing efforts are guided by our 7 policy expert groups, which span across all different aspects of public equity market policy. We also inform our members by issuing a range of guidance materials, not least through the QCA codes, but also have a range of supporting materials on environmental and social issues, audit and remuneration, and board performance, as well as publishing thought-provoking research reports and surveys. And finally, we create interaction through a range of different events, from webinars like this to roundtables, dinners, lunches, and receptions, to allow our members to join together, discuss issues, and gain access to key stakeholders within the capital markets arena. So just in terms of a few things we're currently working on at the moment, we're in the process of updating some of our guidance materials I've just mentioned. So looking at doing our audits committee and remuneration committee guides, as well as our board performance review guides. These aren't major overhauls, but will reflect the updates to the QCA codes from a year or so ago, whilst also ensuring they're in line with evolving good practice. We're also going to be producing for the first time a brand new nomination committee guides. So we will complete the full suite of guidance for the 3 main board committees. And all of these guides will be published very shortly. Elsewhere, across our policy work, we're working on several major policy files at the moment. Some of the key focuses are on annual reports and accounts. So we're updating our much loved report from a few years ago, where we looked at the ever-increasing length of annual reports. It makes for slightly depressing reading, as the situation we've uncovered is very much the same. But this will help us feed into the government's work on non-financial reporting, and help to ensure we're keeping the pressure on to make sure they're pressing ahead with the review and eventual reforms. We're also going to be issuing very shortly a joint report with several other trade bodies on the audit market, which makes several recommendations to improve the audit market following our report last year, where we looked at the increasing costs of audits and the decreasing availability orders. And we intend to feed this in to the government ahead of their forthcoming audit and corporate governance reform bill. And then finally, one other key area we're looking at the moment, and I'm sure lots of people on the call will know about this, but around London Stock Exchange's work on reshaping the future of AIM. So we'll not only be responding to the discussion paper, engaging with the LSE and others throughout the duration of the consultation, but we've also established the QCA and Commission before the launch of the discussion paper, and the idea behind that is we will release a report with findings and recommendations at our annual conference during the summer. So that's enough about the QCA and what we're up to at the moment, and we can move on to B Corps now, which is why everyone's here today. So first of all, what is a B Corp? So a B Corp, or Certified B Corporation, is a business that has been verified and adjudged to meet high standards of social and environmental performance, transparency and accountability. So B Corps are verified by B Lab, which is a non-profit organisation which is seeking to transform the global economy to the benefit of people and the planet. So there are currently over 9,500 B Corps around the world at the moment, spanning across about 150 or so industries and over 100 countries. And here in the UK, we have over 2,500. And this number continued to grow. Becoming a B Corp involves several steps, well, a three-step process, and we'll get into that in a little more detail later on. But it involves conducting an impact assessment, then requires meeting certain legal requirements, including amending the Articles of Association, and then finally, companies will sign a B Corp agreement and declaration of independence. And once this is complete, companies then can become verified B Corps and will have to undergo a 3-year recertification process every 3 years. So I want to go into a bit, given we've got two fantastic B Corps with us today, I want to go on to talk a bit about what motivated Alex and Neil's companies to become B Corps. But just before we do so, I think it would be beneficial if I can just bring in Neil and Alex just to explain a little bit more about your businesses and what you do, and hopefully to give sort of members and attendees, sorry, on the webinar an understanding of the types of businesses that become B Corp. So I'll go to Neil first.
Super, thank you for that introduction, Jack. Yeah, so kind of in a nutshell, who are Xeros? So Xeros Technologies is the full title of the company, and in a nutshell, we're a green tech business. We focus on R&D based in Sheffield and glorious Yorkshire, listed since 2013, and our mission, as you kind of shared a little bit at the beginning, Jack, is that, you know, we're very much about, for sure, returning shareholder value, but actually we're about trying to do so in the right and proper way. You know, we are not just in terms of the technology that we're bringing to market about ESG, you know, we're ESG in terms of the way that we operate as well, which is obviously kind of really relevant for the conversation that we're having today. Yeah, just very broadly, where do we operate? We're operating in two key industries, which are kind of associated. One is garment manufacture, and one is the laundry industry. So the thing that ties the two together is garments. So we're trying to find ways to bring efficiencies to the production of those garments and the cleaning of those garments, and also a reduction of pollutants as well, and kind of finite chemicals that are used in that process. So yeah, that's who we are.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Neil. And Alex?
Hi. So I founded and run 10 Group. We set up to make personalized service scalable for the first time in human history, using technology that, as it happened, didn't happen quite as quickly as we thought 25 years ago, but has happened in the last few. So the first iteration of that is lifestyle concierge. So we help people organize the fun stuff in life, eating out, watching shows and music and so on, travel, and buying luxury items. So those things together are Lifestyle Concierge. We're a global business. We're pretty much we're on pretty much every continent, and our job is to use technology, but also expert people that are really good at organizing those things for our members. And one thing that is relevant for our conversation later on about B Corp is that very few of our members pay to be members, because mostly banks or a wealth management business or a credit card company will pay for you to be a member, and in return they get better customer metrics. So that's important, because that B2B2C angle has really benefited from the B Corp support really as well. Anyway, that's enough about 10.
That's great. Thanks very much, Alex, and really interesting there. And it would be great, since just to sort of build on that and hear a bit about your sort of, what motivated you and your company to become a B Corp in the first place.
Shall I kick off on that, or?
Yes, please, Alex. Yeah.
Okay. So, well, to begin with, I was a little bit nervous about it, and I didn't like the sound of it. My kind of instinctive thing was, how on earth can a kind of what sounds a little bit West Coast kind of certify whether me and my company are good guys or not? I had a kind of almost allergic reaction to it when I first heard about it. And that's because I hadn't quite understood it. Once I understood that it was actually a community where you could understand best practice, learn from it, make your business better, and it wasn't a formula that you had to apply to your, it certainly wasn't one formula that you had to apply to your business, and it wasn't dogmatic. I started really appreciating it more and more and more. And for me, the motivations were, one, why wouldn't we want to make our business better for our people? There were some real advantages in making our business better for the planet as well, not least because part of Lifestyle Concierge can be about encouraging people to consume in ways that are less destructive than they might do otherwise. And also we realized that if we could get really good at this, better than we'd ever been, then we could actually help inspire some of the businesses whose customers we touched as well. So we'd have a kind of compound effect. And many of them felt like they were ready to have those kind of conversations. So I lost my kind of cynicism or fear or allergic reaction, whatever it was, and actually then became a very keen advocate of it. And then we found the process doable. I mean, it had its challenges, but it was doable, and it really did end up with us being a better business.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Alex, and good to hear how positive the process has been, and you're reaping the benefits now. And Neil, I don't know if were there any different sort of motivations for you in sort of the initial discussions about discussing whether to become a B Corp?
Yes, some similarities. So, to be honest, I'm as interested probably in what Alex has to say as anybody is, because I guess I have my own experience of what B Corp B Lab interaction has been. But yeah, I mean, in our case at Xeros, as I kind of alluded to in the introduction, the whole ethos of being considerate from an environmental, social, and governance perspective has really been at the heart of who we are from day one. And I only joined Xeros in August 2022. And actually, it was one of the very first conversations I had with the team. So we already had a sustainability committee in situ, and as part of my kind of induction into the business within that first month, they came and wanted to talk with a real earnestness and a real belief and a passion about a kind of a mission statement, effectively. And it became really clear to me at that point that it was something that from a real kind of bottom up was incredibly important to the staff and the operational people within the business. And when I sort of started looking into it in a more considered way, which is, well, what fundamentally is it that we're trying to achieve with this? Because, and I think this is an important point that everybody needs to be aware of, if you're going into consideration of getting B Corp accreditation because you want to get a badge, it's probably not for you. Authenticity is an oft-used phrase, but I really genuinely believe that that's the case when we talk about things like B Corp. We as a business had already been operating, had already been putting the processes and the procedures into place. And it was really kind of presented to me as a sort of, well, why would we not understand? Why would we not get that third party? The same way as you get an audit of your safety measures, the same way as you get an audit of your accounting procedures. Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you, to make sure that you haven't missed anything, right? So it made perfect sense to me, because it was important from the ethos of who we were as a business. But also, I think another really important bit, which I think Alex kind of touched on a little bit as well, is don't think upon this as being turning your business into kind of eco warriors. This for me is all about efficiencies as much as anything else. If you're doing things the right way from an environmental consideration, you should also be getting some benefits on the bottom line. So it was a really easy one for me on a personal level to sort of see the benefits straight away. But, you know, some of that cynicism that I think Alex talked about, I definitely encountered that when we had that conversation at board level. You know, again, specific to who Xeros are as a business, you know, we're a pre-revenue business. We're still heavily reliant upon the support of our shareholder register. And the sense was, well, are we giving a mixed signal here? You know, at the end of the day, shareholders may want to have this as part of their, I don't want to call it a tick list, but as part of their consideration from an investment perspective. But first and foremost, they're in it to make money. And would we give the wrong impression to that group of stakeholders about what our priorities were? But actually, when it became really clear that, as I said, fundamentally the processes, if you like, that needed to be in place, we kind of already had, and the approaches as a listed business, we actually found there was an awful lot of good work that we'd already had to do to meet that requirement, which actually segued into the B Corp piece. So the board actually came on board when they understood that there would be benefits in terms of the team fundamentally and who we were as a business, and it wasn't contrary to who we had presented ourselves as, that they very much got on board quite quickly. So it was a very natural step for us to take, I think, is the key point tonight.
Well, that's always good to hear. And just going through, you know, the sort of process. Were there any sort of? And I know you said you'd integrated, you know, lots of things already. But did either of you find any sort of unexpected obstacles during, you know, as you were going through the process, or did you have to make any specific changes to your business or the operations to meet the criteria?
I mean, I can. My answer is not really, Jack. To be honest, I mean, I'm interested to hear what Alex has to say upon this. But I mean, we very much already were working within those. I think it was probably quite good because it helped us formalize some of those things. And again, just picking up on that theme of, I felt fundamentally what I didn't want to do was do something for the sake of it to get an accreditation. I wanted us to do it because it felt as though it was the right thing for the business and the right thing for the people within the business. And actually, I mean, even as we, you know, we changed our kind of our people policies in the last 12 months based upon thinking about things like, you know, maternity care, paternity care, and a lot of that actually has come from our association from working with B Corp. So I think, no, fundamentally, we didn't have to do anything above and beyond, but it probably sharpened and focused our attentions upon making it a bit more specific, and that's been really beneficial.
I think for us, we did do quite a few things that we kind of intended to do, but they'd always gone on page 2 or page 3 of things we wanted to do. So we kind of allowed people to volunteer, but we didn't really promote it. And we certainly didn't promote it in every office very effectively, and that now we do. And we didn't have a matched funding for people that did things for decent causes, and that was quick and easy to implement. And you know, we were able to set the levels at which we could afford to match that funding as well. So it didn't kind of give our CFO a heart attack either. And we were also able to do things like, you know, we audited all of our offices, which we thought would just be a straightforward exercise. And actually, one of our biggest offices, we've got a centre in Cape Town, you know, 200 people, no disabled facilities. You know, we just didn't know. So that would have been turning off any candidate we had apply who visited our offices. Would have just thought, here's another place I can't work, and now they can. So there were a bunch of things. I think also, though, once we were a B Corp, or even actually pretty much from us deciding we were going to be, we went out to our corporate clients and said, look, we are a B Corp, or we're about to be, and here's what that means. And what we found is that we were then able to have different conversations with them. So when you're dealing with, so one or two of the organizations we deal with, more than one or two, but we would be dealing with the person we dealt with every day that said, look, guys, deliver great service because then we'll have better customer retention, all the things we're measured on. And we were able to say to them, look, we can help give your customers options about how to live greener, more sustainable lives. What do you think? And some of them said, well, it sounds like you should kind of have a meeting with us and also our head of ESG or something. Now, quite often the head of ESG is 3 levels more senior than our day-to-day contacts. And they wanted to be seen to be doing things that made a genuine difference with their customer base. So suddenly, instead of only being able to send out a broad marketing communication to our eligible membership base, who might be everybody with a NatWest Black account or everybody with a MasterCard World Elite in Ecuador, if we could normally only go out to everybody twice a year, now we can go out maybe twice a year plus 2 more if it's about good things. And we had the credibility to go to them with those ideas. And that directly built our business and influenced how our members lived in a positive way. So it was a kind of win-win-win-win-win. So these kind of things made a difference. I mean, we've also seen a real super result that we didn't do it for this reason, but staff retention and actually recruitment, I don't know if you found this, Neil, but has definitely improved. Recently, I ran a recruitment process for a chief of staff, and we had about 100 applicants that wrote a letter to us, and over a third of them referenced B Corp in their application. And it's not like we don't make such a big deal about it that people have to reference it. It's a genuine response from people. Well, this was a London-based role. It was super powerful for recruitment, and that was a benefit that I had valued before we started it, but I definitely value it now.
And that's brilliant. And those benefits that come alongside it that aren't potentially immediately obvious are fantastic. That you can reap those rewards as well. I think just going back a bit, a step back or so to the process. I think one of the things that may concern some QCA members, obviously given the smaller nature of lots of our members, is the length of the process, how long it will take, and how resource intensive it is. So could I just ask you both a bit about that, and how you found conducting the process, how long it took you from approaching B Lab right through to becoming verified, how long that took, and the amount of resource you dedicated to the process.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, lads. I mean, I think you get the idea from me. It was reasonably straightforward for us, Jack. I think, as with everything, I wouldn't underestimate it. With everything that you do your due diligence, do your research. I think I give credit actually to the B Lab guys. That we kind of hovered around it a little bit. I think I'm not sure how many listed businesses are B Corp, but I mean, not many, right? And actually, before we did it in 23, and did as Alex did, I think that there really weren't many at all. So people are wary of it, and I think B Lab were kind of understanding of that when we wanted to have our conversations and said this is not an easy thing for us to do. There are a number of stakeholders. I mean, you mentioned that the changes to Articles of Association being the one that scares boards of directors before anything else, but they understood that, and I think they fundamentally, I mean, I guess at the end of the day it's in their interest to encourage people to come into the process. They manage expectations really well, but I mean, what was great for us was that kind of evaluation process. They were able to be quite flexible with us, and actually to the point that really, without fully kind of engaging on our part, they were able to give us a bit of an indication of, look, we can't tell you actually, but this is what we think your score would probably be, because it's that whole bit of worrying about, well, is there going to be a whole load of extra work that we need to do within that? Now, we obviously did do quite a lot of work up front. We did the due diligence, we read through, and we took the kind of suggestions and insights from the contacts that we had made. But they were very helpful in terms of making it really clear to us, going back to that experience as it related to you, which is, although it was clear to me quite early on that this was something that on a personal level I could see the benefits of. I knew by their very nature the board were going to be suspicious, and so we had to do that so that we could get that kind of appropriate approval levels before we can proceed appropriately without officially doing that. So it's difficult in one way. You kind of want to learn enough to know to have a meaningful conversation, but not actually start the process without the proper approval levels. So I would say actually it was really quite straightforward for us to do that kind of initial evaluation process, and even after we had kind of concluded that bit with the board giving their kind of their necessary approvals on it, verification was quicker than we thought. I mean, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, I think we were told, listen, this could be 12 months before we even get round to seeing you, to talking to you, and to doing the kind of process. But I think, again, because we had done a lot of good due diligence and we'd had developed that kind of relationship, we weren't coming into it too cold, and they kind of knew maybe there was a bit, well, we kind of get a sense that these guys should be a fairly easy one to get in. So yeah, I mean, I think we managed to go from saying we wanted to do it to actually to being given the accreditation in 6 months, which was, you know, much faster than we had thought it would be, which was helpful as well, because again, going back to the Articles of Association, we knew that we would have to have that in as one of the points of approval for the AGM. So yeah, very, very straightforward for us. But as I said, keen to understand Alex's experience as well.
Well, ours was much more arduous.
Okay.
but really, because it took us a little bit longer for a few reasons. Firstly, the UK is about 20% of our business, but we've got businesses in parts of the world where B Corp were not used to auditing and checking. So, you know, Brazil, for instance, or Japan, South Africa, where some of the labor laws and ways that we set up kind of made answering the standard B Corp questions, given that the two biggest markets for B Corp are the US and the UK, are quite difficult to answer. For instance, our wages in Brazil are set by a wages council. So that creates all sorts of kind of none of the above was some of the answer to some of the B Corp questions. And we had to do an audit for the UK and then one internationally as well. So it took us altogether about 18 months. Now, we weren't like working on it desperately every day to try and reduce that to as little as it could be. And we did find the people at B Labs very, very helpful and supportive through the process. But it took us a while. I would say at every stage we were learning stuff. So had we never become a B Corp, it still would have been a useful process for us. And I think that's how we justified going through it at the time, because it was a step into the unknown for us, was, well, look, if this starts becoming way more work than we're seeing value from, then we'll pause. But actually at every level, every step we took, we were learning things that were improving our business. And then happily, we did result in becoming a B Corp. So it was more arduous, partly because it was international. I think B Corp are learning more about that, though, as they go, and learning more about each market. And I think the one thing that I would also say, one thing that made it easier for us is the person that we put on it was very much a volunteer, or somebody who wanted to make it happen. And so that really helped, because we had agreement at senior levels, and then everybody involved in the project was really up for it. So it had its own momentum, born of kind of passion and interest and people willing to go the extra mile, and people that were looking for the positive learnings. It wasn't given to anybody to stuck on their to-do list as something that they had to do. And that's been one thing we found all the way through the process, is we've found people that want to make this happen and want to make things that have fallen out of B Corp or happened as a result. They've wanted to make those happen too. So it hasn't felt like work. So maybe arduous isn't quite the right word for it.
Great stuff. Thanks very much, both. Well, I think that sort of perfectly sort of segues into speaking about some of the benefits. And Alex, you mentioned even if you didn't become a B Corp, which obviously you have, but the process itself still would have been really beneficial and helped you identify things within the organisation. But you've already mentioned a bit about sort of how it's helped recruiting and retaining staff and employees, which is obviously a brilliant benefit that comes alongside it that wasn't necessarily immediately obvious. Neil, I wonder if you've experienced sort of similar benefits within Xeros, and whether that's helped you as well with your recruiting and retaining staff.
Yeah, so I mean, I suppose there's four key areas, I guess, that are of consideration, and actually B Lab kind of highlight these as that this is the reason to go through this process. I mean, the first one, I guess, is fundamentally, is it going to improve your company performance? And I think there's a slightly tenuous study that they reference from Ghent University, which is B Labs versus non-B Labs in the first year following their kind of accreditation, and apparently those B Lab businesses outperformed. I mean, I wouldn't say that we outperformed what we had previously done based upon becoming a B Corp. We did actually improve, but I think that was probably more so about the fact that we were just being a little bit more focused in terms of the things that we wanted to do. So I suppose you could say, if you are the sort of business that wants to consider how you're operating and thinking about becoming a B Corp, well, then that's just it's good practice anyway, isn't it? The only caveat that I would add to that, which is something that Alex mentioned previously, fundamentally our core, we are a green tech business. One thing I've absolutely seen, and even just in the last 2 years, is the increasing power of heads of sustainability. These were, I mean, I'm sorry to say, they were kind of ceremonial roles probably about 3 or 4 years ago. They didn't really have any power. The people that were put into them didn't really have any authority or any kind of sway. That's massively changed in the last kind of 12 to 18 months. I don't think we're getting traction because we're a B Corp. I think that helps, but I think we're getting traction because fundamentally we are a green tech business. So, I guess we have a slightly jaundiced perspective upon that, but I certainly think that if you can demonstrate that you are a business that considers these things, that for sure will help you. But I mean, the Xeros experience is company performance, probably not so much. I think that bit that you mentioned about the employee company culture, 100%. I mean, that's been really, really, really good for us, and measurably so. One of the things that I did when I first joined was start to do these kind of employee engagement surveys, and it wasn't great, if I'm honest. But the last couple of years, our scores have gone up significantly, and it is because fundamentally we are really clear about who we are as a business, not just in terms of what we're trying to achieve with our commercial goals, but actually in the way that we're going about doing it. And I guess being a B Corp is a big part of that. Staff retention is up. That can't be a coincidence as well. And again, just echoing what Alex said, when we recruit for new roles, we have open roles, people reference it. And again, you think fundamentally they would know we're a green tech business, but actually the point that they can see that reference straight away, it's a way for them to go, I get it. Now I believe it. It's not some some baloney, it's true. You wouldn't have this accreditation if you weren't walking the walk, right? So that bit has helped. I mean, I think the other bit people talk about is this kind of community network. I would say that our personal experience is that it probably hasn't been as much. We haven't seen as much benefit from that as we probably could have done. And if I'm honest, I get perennially disappointed when I don't know if Alex experiences this as well, but when I get cold calls or outreach from companies trying to sell me services, and the first thing they say is, as a fellow B Corp, fundamentally doesn't feel right to me, because then you're not really embracing what the whole thing is supposed to be about. But like I said, that could be our own experience, and I think it's equally fair to say that we probably haven't leveraged it quite as much as we could have done. And I guess the final bit is, as a public listed business, you're always thinking about investors as well, and everyone talks about those kind of ESG funds, and do you automatically get access to them? I would say, Xeros experience, we are the smallest of small caps. We're not on the radar for these people, so I wouldn't say that we have attracted new investment as a result of that. I would say that, contrary to picking up on the point I'd made about the board being concerned about messaging to our shareholders, I do think actually they'd like to, and a number of our institutional shareholders have actually come and asked us about what that experience has been, have added us onto a list, if you like, of here is an example of the sort of business that we invest in. I think we probably would have featured on that anyway, even if we weren't a B Corp, because of the fundamentals of who we are. But I again, personal experience, so I wouldn't say that. I guess the conclusion for us is that, and I've said it already, but if you are thinking about becoming a B Corp for any other reason than it naturally feels like it's the right thing to do, then don't. It's not going to give you that magic bullet, really, I don't think. And it's a bit like a conversation I had with an investor a couple of weeks ago, and they were talking about how everybody's trying to brand themselves as AI now, when they're not. They just have a sensor technology or something. People see through that. So I think if you are a business that wants to do things the right way, then it's the natural step to take. If you're not, then maybe it's not for you.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Dale. And sorry, Alex, I'll let you come in just one second, but I just want to remind attendees that to please insert some questions in the Q&A tab, and we can get to those shortly. But Alex, over to you. And I wonder if you've had sort of experienced similar situation to Neil. Has it improved your relationships with investors, and have you noticed any positive developments in that front, or even other stakeholders like your suppliers and partners? Has becoming a B Corp produced benefits in that sense?
Well, I mentioned before that it's definitely helped us with recruitment. I think it's also helped us with retention and people to actually understand what we're about. And Neil kind of touched on this, really. I didn't think we needed external validation for people to know that what we're all about. I mean, at the heart of what Ten's all about is it's about using people's personal data to serve them better. And your data is either going to be manipulated to affect how you live by government, by companies, or by you. And we do it on behalf of you. We enable that to happen. That's a great thing, and we'll talk about this internally and talk about how we're all about serving people and their loved ones and not selling stuff to them. And this all makes us a good business. And lots of people listen to that. I now realize lots of people listen to that and went, oh, yeah, that's kind of nice, and then forgot about it. And actually, B Corp gave a third-party endorsement, which for some people, particularly people that aren't in the UK, who don't kind of see us face to face, gave us an endorsement that meant that people actually considered that more, and I think probably believed it more, which they should do. So that was good, because I think that played to retention. If you need to write a hard-assed business case for it, for 10, it helps us recruit talent, helps us retain talent, helps us grow revenue streams, because we can promote things which are helping with a kind of ESG agenda to our customer base through our B2B contact banks and wealth managers and so on that want to do that. Not all of them do, but enough of them do to make a material difference to our revenues. And then, of course, it just is a good thing. So we, in our own ESG reporting, I mean, God knows we don't do stuff so that we can report on it, but it is a good thing, and that does help us with some of our shareholders. I think I've had most of our shareholders are positive about ESG agenda. Not all of them. We've got two shareholders, one UK fund, quite well-known fund, who were who aren't yet an investor, by the way, but they saw it as something that should be a little bit wary of. They thought that maybe we had, kind of gone a little bit kind of woke, gone mad or something, that kind of annoying approach. But when we said to them, well, look, you don't have to believe we're doing this to help the world. If you wanted, you would do this if you were me, even if you don't care, because of the impact on the other metrics in the business. And that was quite convincing, I think, for them. In that, we've had a few meetings with them since, and they seem to be very engaged. So maybe they'll be a holder by next time we speak. And then I had only one shareholder. Who only one existing holder was negative, and he's just gone a bit down the manosphere, and just doesn't like any of this stuff, and he wasn't open to it. He is massively outweighed by the shareholders who really get it, and they themselves then understood more about our mission. Because you're on the face of it, a lifestyle concierge service is not an obvious candidate to be a B Corp. We organise all the nice stuff in life that can be seen to be highly consumptive, but our angle is about us doing it for the right reasons, as affecting people's behaviour in positive ways for the world as well as for them. And also this whole thing around using data and challenging the business models out there today, which are using data against you rather than for you. Now, that doesn't really fit on a B Corp questionnaire, but it does align with being a values-led business that's got a mission that isn't only about maximizing short-term profits for shareholders. So I think the credibility thing around our messaging was probably the single most important thing, because that's what then helped us with retention, recruitment, growing the business. And then finally, the challenges, some of the things that we were about to do for years and years and years, we just didn't do, or we did them on an ad hoc basis. And now that we do them every year, it's part of who we are. They're happening at scale. We had many hundreds and hundreds of people around the world volunteer last year who didn't volunteer before. And of course, the shareholder of mine might say, well, they should have been at work. Okay, then maybe they should have been at work. But actually, they were out doing things they loved with people they worked with. And I remember years ago, one of the hotel groups we worked with said that the number one lead indicator of people staying in their company was some of my best friends are at work. And you get that by doing things like volunteering. It's so bonding. And we see that. And for me, we don't have to have a hard-ass business plan to carry on doing it and to have done it in the first place. But when people need to see one, we've got it.
Well, that's great. Yeah, thanks very much, Alex. And positive also to hear that the vast majority of your shareholders do see the benefit in it. I suppose it's not everyone's cup of tea, but nice to see that most do. And fingers crossed that other investor comes on as a holder. But
can I just mention on that? And this is one of your other questions, but my non-execs were more worried about it than my fund managers. Mm-hmm. And so we did them in an order, right? Lombard Odier are a B Corp. So I called up Robert Lombard Odier. Some people on this call will know him, and said, look, we're going to become a B Corp. What do you think? And he said, great. And he's about as hard-ass a capitalist as you're going to meet amongst the very capitalist fund management community. And then we went to Canaccord, and they said, fantastic, do it. Soros said, do it. Herald were like, sounds like a great idea. Bailey Gifford were all systems go. All River Merck were very supportive, and that was like suddenly like, oh, hang on, that's all the fund managers that we should reach out to. And then since then, Gresham have invested, and they were very positive about, or they were positive about it. They were definitely positive about it, and we had a family office that stayed invested, partly because we're a B Corp. So. It's definitely been a plus. And then, of course, your non-execs or my non-execs were only worried about it in case our shareholders had a problem. So the moment they didn't, then it was all really straightforward in terms of corporate governance.
That's their job, though, Alex, isn't it? They've got to always be the counterbalance to you. It's exactly the same experience as I had. Yeah. The biggest issue was the non-execs. It wasn't actually the fund managers. Spoke to some of those similar people that you did as well, in the same response. So, yeah.
And I think one reason I was pleased to do that, and I'm specifically calling out these guys now, is so that anyone watching this, all those names I mentioned who are on many of our share registers, they're up for it, and they're still supportive of us today. Many, and we were the first on AIM, I think, or one of the first, wow. which was good. So, I mean, if anybody does have any follow-up questions, I'm more than happy to have them through Jack or direct.
Thanks very much, Alex. And yeah, I suppose it's just a case of convincing the board that you're able to balance sort of B Corp commitments alongside those traditional business imperatives as well at the same time. But I think just moving on slightly, I think both of you became certified at a similar time, and sort of, you know, within the next year or so, approaching the recertification process. So perhaps I'll come to you first, Neil, if that's okay. Just interested to hear what about a bit about your you know, your thoughts on that recertification process, and obviously sort of continuous improvement as well.
Yeah, that's the right way to look upon it as well, Jack. It's continuous improvement, and I suppose kind of echoing a little bit of what Alex has said and some of the themes of today, which is that if it's one of those that you get your accreditation and then you put it in a drawer and forget about it for a year, forget about it for 2 years until you've got to revalidate, well, then, you know, it's probably not the right thing, and you're not doing it for the right reasons. I think if you embrace it in the right way and actually think about it as just being a bit more efficient in the way that you run your business, because actually it's been really good in that regard. Never mind just the kind of the green angle to it. It's felt just natural now. So we every year is just part of, you know, our company goals. We always have sustainability targets. We push ourselves in the way that we operate. So it's been a good prompt. It's kind of kept us honest. It's kept us to timelines. Again, echoing a little bit what Alex said, instead of something being on page 2, you're like, well, no, let's pull it up to page 1, because why can't we do it? And actually, it has not, sorry to repeat myself, it's not just been about doing it for a box ticking exercise. It's been doing it because we've seen the benefits. So when we implemented, you know, volunteer days, people have loved it, you know, and they've come back actually more enthusiastic. And it hasn't been about, well, that's one day out of the business that we've lost them. They probably come back and be more enthusiastic about the business anyway as a result of that, because we've been thinking about the efficiencies of the way that we work so that we can lower our CO2e footprint. You know, we've actually saved money. Again, these are really good things. So no, I mean, it's the fundamentals. I don't, B Corp at the end of the day is one of these organizations. I'm not going to sit here and say that Xeros will for perpetuity always be a B Corp accredited business, but I think that the ethos of what it is to go through a process like this, you know, we're bought in 100%, and we will continue to operate that way. And yeah, I would expect that's who we are now.
Great stuff. And Alex, I'll come to you if that's okay. But sort of, you know, looking ahead, do you feel very much the same? You know, the turn of the year and the Trump administration, and you know, there's been lots of conversation about environmental and social issues, and you know, there's obviously been some movement away from that, particularly in the States, but you know, to some degree over here as well. And you know, some asset managers and owners have rolled back on their, or watered down their commitments. You know, looking forward, do you still see you know, value in the B Corp movement, and how do you see it sort of changing in your industry?
Yeah, I do see value in it moving forward. And whilst, you know, in some areas the zeitgeist shifted, I think in other areas it's become more, there's more commitment from many companies, many groups of people. And you know, I'm hoping that the rest of the world doesn't become as kind of politicized and as polarized as the US is. And we've got a decent sized business in the US. And you're right, there's a risk there that, you know, people like this have these beliefs, and the same on the other side. But I don't think we have that anywhere else in the world. I think there's more of a nuanced, and people can kind of manage the and appreciate what we're trying to do as a B Corp. I would say, for those of you that don't know, there are many of you will, there are new standards out for B Corp, and we're going through those kind of gradually at the moment. We don't need to recertify for a while, so we're looking at those, seeing what we can learn from those. And I'm sure there'll be some good new thinking that comes out of that as well, that should give us some kind of fresh things to think about and some new things to put into the business that will be good for us. So so far we've continued to see it be good for the business, good for making improvements in the business, as Neil said, kind of efficiently, because as you can get this learning from hundreds of other companies that have done similar things, what works, what doesn't, so you can make decisions quicker. And so I can't see a world in which we wouldn't carry on being a B Corp. But I mean, never say never. But I think we're committed to it. I know we're committed to it for the foreseeable.
Good, great to hear. And I suppose sort of almost just to wrap up, Alex and Neil, what advice would you give to QCA members perhaps considering B Corp certification?
Go ahead.
I think I've pretty much said it all, to be honest, Jack. I think do your due diligence, make sure that you properly understand what's required, make sure that it fits with the culture of your business as it is today, or maybe should I say more so the culture that you would like to see implemented within the business. If it feels as though it's difficult, if it feels as though it's too much on top of what you're trying to achieve anyway, again, I would probably say it's possibly not for you. And go into it with an expectation that this just improves the way that you operate as a business, and any fringe benefits that you get from that, whether that be retention, whether that be engagement for your employees. Maybe you do get a new ESG focused shareholder on maybe you get a new customer as a base. That's all well and good, but don't do it thinking that that's the reason why, because there's no guarantees, and that's not what it's about.
I'd say three things. I wouldn't let your board have theoretical conversations about whether shareholders will like it or not. You can phone 3 or 4 fund managers and they'll tell you, by returning an email to you, they'll tell you. And so you can skip that bit of NEDs representing fund managers if they don't need to. The fund managers can represent themselves. The second thing, I'd make sure that you had volunteers working on it. Obviously, people that are good at running projects and can manage this kind of thing, but there'll be some people in an organization that will love this as a project and they will make it happen far better than anybody who's less committed to it. And then thirdly, see it as a learning process. I think for us, if we hadn't managed to, get the right score and become B Corp certified, it still would have been worthwhile because of what we learned along the way. And we started that learning quite early on in the process. So I wouldn't see it as a binary, like, do you get your badge or not? It's not like a kind of ISO or a SOC 2 or any of those certifications. This is a learning experience that's going to improve your business, even were you to decide not to become a B Corp at the end of the process. Mm-hmm. And we're still learning, and we're going to learn from the new set of standards, I'm sure, as well. So it's been thoroughly helpful for us. And that cynicism I had originally about, West Coast Americans telling us what good looks like and kind of forcing us to be good in a way that's what it looked like from California, was the opposite of what we get from B Labs and the other B Corps we learn from. It's just people trying to improve how they work in ways that are long-term sustainable and that make people feel good about the business that they run and work in, and that's just been good for everybody.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's a nice way to close off today. So, thank you ever so much, Neil and Alex, for sharing, your thoughts and experiences today. I've certainly learned a lot more than I knew, and I'm sure those on the call, those on the webinar today, have also learned a lot. So, thank you very much for sharing all of your wisdoms. I'd also like to thank attendees for joining today's event. And just, if I may, a quick plug. A reminder to please go and check out all of our other exciting events. Our big 2 events of the year, the annual conference and annual dinner, are both coming up shortly. Our annual conference is on the 5th of June. We've got a super exciting lineup of speakers already. Emma Reynolds, the Economic Secretary to the Treasury, Lord Mayor City of London. We've got the FRC CEO, Richard Moriarty, Stephen Welton, the Chair of the British Business Bank, and other senior executives from the FCA and LSE, amongst many, many more. So please do go look that out. Places are filling up very, very quickly. So be sure to get your ticket before they all go. And then the other one, our annual dinner, promises to be bigger and better than ever. A new venue this year of the British Museum on the 11th of September. And similarly, tables are selling fast. So please do head on over to our events section of the website. But thanks very much all for attending today. And I'm just going to hand back to Paul now to close off.
Fantastic, Jack. Alex, Neil, thank you very much indeed. On behalf of the QCA, thank you very much for attending today's session. That concludes today's presentation, and good afternoon.